right here. So ScreenFlow that I use in tandem. I'm going to record both. All right, we're back. That's how I usually start off. And 124, that is advanced iOS development here at Centennial College. In the winter, we are a week of our broadcast. Notice that I'm trying to modulate my voice. I'm not trying to talk too quickly because it really sucks when someone's speaking quickly. I have this Blue Ice microphone, which makes it a little easier. If you don't have a mic, use headphones. Get fan noise when you record, right? You're going to get other kinds of noises and distractions. Room, okay? Don't be in a room with a bunch of kids yelling all the time. Trust me, I've tried that before. Daddy, I want to play Fallout, Daddy, right? He's 4 years old, right? Daddy, I want to play Halo. You can't have that in the background when you record it. Doesn't make any sense, right? So be in a quiet room, a place where you're good. Rent a room. You can also reserve a room here on campus. Connection. My recommendation, if you're going to screencast and if you want good quality for whatever reason, be wired in. So see if you can get a wire right now, and that's a problem. Sometimes the connection goes up and down because of all the connections here in the room, right? Touch the screen anymore. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to minimize it. I'm going to keep it open because if I close it, my broadcast is over. So please don't do that. Keep your screen going. When you bring up your PowerPoint, and again, my PowerPoint is going to be week 2, right? And I've got like 90 slides or whatever I'm going to go through. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to talk about chapter 4 from the book, all right? PowerPoint, I'm not going to go over every slide. That makes no sense. One thing to note is on the Mac, if you're using Office 365 from the Mac, which is, right? Or whatever, and if you're broadcasting live, because I'm on the screen here or whatever, when I first go live, is if I start recording everything, I'm just going to show you this. And if I kind of maximize my screen by clicking this button, right? A funny thing happening, right? This, which is bad, right? This is glitchy poop. Killed my screen. Luckily, this is okay, but look what's happened. It kicked me out of recording my screen, recording myself, which I don't care about recording myself ever, right? Share. Right? So be careful because some of the tools do that. Your screen. I'm pulling it up and I'm showing you this stuff because I've gone through it. That's what I do. I've got like, I think 1,200 videos now, right? So again, my PowerPoint died, right? It's just dead. Hopefully I saved it, right? Yes. So some PowerPoint, make it a little bigger. You can do that as well. You can hide some of this stuff as well. Nothing's wrong with using Google Slides. I think it's a great place to set up a Google Drive with, kind of a collaboration perspective to share your stuff on Google Drive, right? Use Slack. I think there's some really cool Google Drive integrations for Slack when you kind of build a routine. For those people who've just joined, by the way, I'm not trying to mess up the recording. I'm talking about, if you're not here physically, I'm talking about how to record or screencast. That's part of what I'm doing today. Okay, so the app we're going to build. Again, it's from chapter 4. We may not finish today, right? Is this little app, right? We're going to make our own logo. We're going to get our own logo in there. We're going to talk about how to do that. Any of these slides I can, then I'll put up the PowerPoint presentation later on for you guys, right? But again, it's excerpts from chapter 4 of the book. It was 5th 3. Okay, so I'm going to go through the book, kind of a chapter by chapter exercise. Lesson is all about iOS interaction basics. Okay, so we're building this app. Notice that there's a couple things here that we have. Action sheets here by the end. That takes a little bit of time. You guys ever done? Did you guys do action sheets last semester? No. Basic layout, no stack layout. Okay, still basic layouts, right? Okay. One thing that this PowerPoint goes into is how to build the application. So it talks about here the whole code compile debug cycle that they talk about here in the application layout, right? And it talks about how, I'm not going to read the slides, it talks about how to build your application, right? So they don't build the background first. The background is last. This is what it's going to look like at the end. They tell you what it does. Click on the button, it gives you a little bit of a message. Actually, the last part of this, the first part, is really important, okay? Guys, did anyone in your calculator app for assignment 1, did you guys ever use the built-in keyboard? Did you ever think about doing that? There's a built-in keyboard, right? The keyboard, right? What if you use the built-in? Could you use the built-in keyboard? Is that possible too? Is there a keyboard for things you need for your calculator? That's the other question. Is there, right? So think about that. I know that I had other people did that. They actually built a row of keys for your row of keys with a sequence of buttons, which is all your operations. And then they built, kind of brought up the keyboard with all the buttons, right? Solution, right? But they have to make the keyboard stay. You can't click it away and it can't go away. It has to always be up for the first time, right? They did that. Someone kind of thought of that and they said, why am I going to make buttons on my own when there's like all these keyboards that Apple has, right? That's another solution for you guys. And you should check. It actually does weird things to your layout, but it's another way of doing things. One of the things we're going to have a problem here we're going to talk about is gesture recognizers. We need to talk about gesture recognizers. Did you guys talk about that all last semester? Okay. A gesture recognizer is exactly what it says. It recognizes some kind of tap or swipe or something, right? It's a gesture that it recognizes, right? These in here for this app because when the keyboard comes up, what's the typical thing we do? We connect our, if I was going to look at the phone, right? From the keyboard, it goes down, right? That is something you have to, I'll show you how to do that today. And I'm going to skip to that part. I'm not going to go through how to build this thing. I recommend when I put this PowerPoint up, it's good practice for you guys to try and do this app. It's not a big app, by the way. Let's take a look. Building a classic interfaces with labels, some image controls, and that kind of stuff. That's what we're doing here, right? They also talk about how to take things out of passive mode. Some controls are always in passive mode. If there was a mode for a control, what would you think a control would be that would always be in passive mode? Think about some controls that would be in passive mode. It actually says this here too. Text fields, right? Text fields are passive. They're not going to, if you click on a text field, no, unless you do some validation, right? Like entry validation. Then you can actually have some active or actions that are associated with it. Don't trigger events like labels. They don't trigger events. They just sit there. They're always going to be there. Logos. That's kind of passive. Nothing. You don't do anything with a logo. You just put it up there, right? Passive mode as opposed to active. I'm not going to go too much into this because they talk about some of this stuff in. What they ask you to do is when we create our new application, they have 3 logos. Did you guys talk about this kind of thing about how to generate different images for iOS? Did they talk about that at all? Okay, I'm asking because I need to know, right? Because otherwise I just, right? The answer is no. Thank you. Say no. You're good at talking. Say no next time. She's just not paying attention right now. I'm talking without it. Hi. Hi. She's busy. If you haven't learned anything, say it. And you're not paying attention. Okay.
I mean, we just learned it.
Oh, here she goes now. Now it's too late. That ship has sailed, like I said. All right. Let's pull up Xcode. So if I'm pulling up Xcode and I'm creating this project, again, I'm using Xcode 8. Don't worry about what 8 that I'm using right now. .1, right? Is it the latest one on the developer site? Could be, but it's not important. Project here, right? And again, if you notice what it says here to create, it says control fun. That's what the application is called. I'm not going to call it that. I'm going to call it the name of my lesson, right? I'm still only using the single view application, not because I don't know the other ones, but because we still have to focus on basics, understand the basics, right? Let's do that next. And again, I told you we would have a couple weeks of that. It's Centennial, right? Let's put that in there. So Centennial College. Do that properly. And the product name will be Comp PD Amped. That's a better name for the course. Amped. Right? Applied mobile program, program development. How about that? MAPD. So MAPD124 is what we're doing 2017, and then lesson 2. That's what we're going to call it, right? Because that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that I have to call it something interesting. I'm using Swift. I'm making a universal app. Again, there's some advantage to taking this off. Did you guys do any kind of unit tests at all last semester?
No.
No. I'm looking at her because you're going to answer. If I look at other people, you're going to be quiet because you're being recorded on YouTube, right? Forever. I'm going to save it in my Xcode projects. I'm going to, again, by default, you should click on Create Git Repository on my Mac. Okay? It does the git init method right away. Like that's the first thing it does when you're going to do things right here. Last week, did I cover console commands for Git? Did I cover that at all? Yes? Other classes, no? With Victor, right? If I'm not wrong. So you guys covered Git commands, right? In detail, you guys know how to do Git? Okay. Just putting it out there. What's the answer? Is the answer yes? Yes. Is it yes?
Yeah, we covered the basics.
Basics. It means you don't still understand.
We did also like the feature.
You did branching and merging?
Yes, we merged.
And you did like pull requests? Okay. Oh, well, we'll see. I guess I can totally explain. It's not a big issue. Actually, I do Git. Right? It's like the thing that I do all the time, right? It's like I can't live without Git and GitHub. It's bizarre, right? Everything with Git. Okay, so I got my my little application here, and I got my main storyboard. And when I click on my main storyboard, I'm going to pull some stuff in here, just like it says, right? One of the things it talks about is assets in your XC assets, right? So here's my XC assets. Have you ever pulled stuff in there? Okay. And when I pull stuff in there, now it has some default assets because of the book. I have the book assets, right? But what I want to do is I want to create these logos, right? Notice that is A-Press logo. It says ping and A-Press. I'm not going to use A-Press, right? And one of the keys is, if you look down into the PowerPoint when I give it to you, right? Actually, in the book, it kind of gives, you know what? If you want to add something to the asset catalog, and because what their logo they recommend is 100 pixels tall by 300 pixels wide, or 3 times. You make 3 different versions, right? Have you guys ever done that? 3 different versions. Yes, you're saying yes. I got to look at the other people too because they say no. No, but did you make your own assets? Margot, did you make your own assets? People are saying no. Reza says no, right? Okay, let's see. So, what would I do to create my asset? What asset creation program do you use? You could use Sketch, all Mac systems, whatever. You could use GIMP if you're someone who likes open source tools, or Krita, right? Which is also a free Photoshop-like clone. They're pretty good tools. I prefer to use Fireworks when I create my stuff because it's an older program by Adobe, a Photoshop Lights kind of thing when I create my tools. And they should be ping images. That's what I should do. Ping images for this. So again, if I do a new image and it says 100 by 300, my 100 by 300 image, if I was going to do it, so again, its width is 300, right? So 300 by 100, right? That's how it should be. Resolution is okay. I'll leave that alone. Background should be transparent, right? Because that's why you're using a ping image in the first place. Otherwise, I mean, you could make it white if your background is going to be white all the time, right? But if I want to match it up with different color schemes in the background, probably transparent's the right approach. Press OK. And again, you can use any program from what I'm doing. I just have a little swatch here that I'm using, right? So whether I zoom or out, it just zooms in the quality of what I'm just, this is to, to make it work, right? And again, what if you have no ideas for a logo? You're not an artist. Saying to yourself that I'm not an artist is a real cop-out, eh? It's like an out, right? Guys, you should all be, by next semester, some sort of technical artist. You should know the ability for you to put things together to make them look okay. Where you're going to say, I'm an artist, I'm going to sell my work on the street, or whatever, or in a gallery. But you should be able to put some stuff together here to do. I'm thinking about this app. It's going to be, like we said, controlled fun. Worst case scenario, right? You may want to put some kind of images, or if you're going to make a logo or some kind of thing, you could put something in the background, right? Like some kind of texture in the background would be something that you could totally do. A lot of free textures from textures.com, right? Textures.com, lots of little textures you can put in. When I make games, textures.com. I grab some, some free textures up here, that make sense. And depending on what kind of texture you want to make, as an example, let's say I want to make some kind of, or maybe some buildings in the background. I can look at some buildings, right? Like maybe I want to put something in there, looking like a chemical plant. I don't know. And my idea is I'm going to get a building, and on the top of the building, I'll put like controls, something like that, right? Something easy. That it's scalable. So here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to take an image, if I'm going to use it for iOS, and then have the system scale up. How come I don't? I can do it, right? But why would I not want the image? Like, why would I not want the system to scale my image for me? Come on, think about this now. The system is going to do it for me. Is that a good practice to do? It's never a good practice. Doesn't matter whether it's web, iOS, games, absolutely not. You should have all your assets pre-scaled. Why? Because computers actually have to work hard to scale things up. It's an operation that they have to do with their pixels, right? Why would you want the computer to do that? That's not the main function of my machine. Right now, to scale up my graphics. No. Make it easy. Create your graphics ahead of time, before runtime, right? So I'm going to take something. Okay, you guys help me out here. I got to take some kind of controls. I want to choose some kind of background that maybe doesn't make sense right now. This, right? Because that looks kind of more professional. I'll take this one. There's glass high rises. There's a bunch of Asian tower blocks. I don't know. I use neat. I like this idea, right? And maybe I can put in, instead of the windows, I can put in my letters. Trying to think of trying to be creative here. Remember, being an artist, I can be a technical artist. I don't have to be, an artist. Click this one. Options for buildings, right? These are actual buildings that someone took pictures of, it looks like, right? That might be okay, but boring. I don't know. Maybe there's some more interesting ones. That's not bad. I can probably put something in there, like, try and do something in there, and I can scale it. This looks pretty okay. Again, you can pick your own. And then now again, I've signed up. You have to sign up here. Free means premium, you have to pay, right? And again, this is a great site for textures, but I want to just now. Here's a question for you. What do I want to choose? Bigger image, or do I want to choose a smaller image? What would you recommend? Just in your logic, if you could intuit, what do I want? Bigger image or smaller image? What's better? Why big? Why is a big thing good? No, but I can't scale it up. I always say this, right? I always say it's better to have too much than not enough, right? Always. I think it's just a general thing for me, right? Which is kind of unrelated, which is you don't want to overcook your steak, because you know what? Once it's overcooked, it's done, right? And then I can cook it a little bit more, right? It's kind of not related though. and I don't need steak anymore. But anyways, we'll see how it goes. Let's try this out. So if I go to, and if I download it, it says register, right? I already kind of did that. So I can, it says don't have an account, register for free here. I can log in. It didn't remember who I was. Let's see if I can remember my password. A million of these. Was it this one? Free credits, 15. Yeah, I'll save my password for that little site. Let's try that again. So this one, download it. And my you know what? I'll put it in my course. How about that? So since we're using it, I'll save it. I'll put it up on eCentennial later on. So I'll show you the one how I built it. Here's my course, and I'll put it in week 2. All right, so there it is. So now this is textures.com high-rise night. A little different. So high-rise background, we'll call it high-rise background. That's what it is. JPEG, JPG, I just call it, I used to call it JPEG. I'm an old guy, right? So I'm going to open it up on, I can see where my image is going to be. This is what it's going to look like right now. And is it the right size? This is the size I want. And this is my image. So I'm going to copy this image, paste it. Now that's, why is it showing this? Because it's massive, right? My image is this big, right? And so I can, so again, there's a scaling tool on the left, right? And what I can do is if I click on this image, kind of, I can scale it down. That's one way I can do it. Now it's really massive. And sometimes scaling things on programs like this makes results, right? Sometimes you have to do an operation, right click, and then go transform, scale. I want to scale this down to like, it looks like 10% or something like that. And also I'm running other things in the background, which is taking a long time. But oh, there we go. Wow, it's actually giving me the scale now. Oh, okay. Then I can scale in. Scale it in, right? And I kind of scale it so it fits the thing. If I go too small like this, then I'm gonna have a blank space over here. That's no good, right? Here's what you don't want to do. I don't want to do this. This is bad if I did this. How come? It's skewed, right? It's not gonna look right. Someone's gonna look at this and go, something's wrong. What did Tom do, right? So again, when I'm scaling, as I have my control, whether I'm doing, by eye, I want to keep it proportional. Okay, now I don't have to be like this. I can make it so that the image itself, after it's been scaled, be scaled a little bigger than that. Actually, I missed that. Down here I have controls. I have 300. I can make this 300, and I could make it linked. So if you notice, I could turn on linking, so I can go 300. Properly, that's exactly the right size, right? But maybe what I want to do, I want to move it so that the windows appear in the middle somewhere. That's okay. And by the way, if I don't like it, I can always scale it bigger. Like let's say I want to get rid of these 2 lines, right? And I want to make it so that I just see windows. I can scale it a little bigger now. I could do it like this from the middle, just to get rid of the lines, maybe a little bigger. Just so I can get rid of those 2 ugly borders and make it kind of more proportional. There we go. Okay. Now I want to zoom in again, and I can see that there's a bit of background, and now I can add my text, so I can layer that on top. I can also create another layer on the right side, right? Why is layering really good to do? Well, first of all, I can turn off my layers, right? The existing layer alone, I can even lock the layer, right? This doesn't matter whether in Photoshop or this program. Every other program does it the exact same way, right? Right. I can go in here and I can go, okay, I want a layer, right? There's layer 2 or layer 1. So here's layer 1. Here's layer 2, and I want to kind of add in anything else. This is where I want my layer to go. So I kind of when I click on layer 2, right? Here's layer 1. Layer 1 is this thing, right? Something I'm clicking on. So this is layer 1, it's all locked up, right? But layer 2 is not locked, and I can start typing my text. So remember, I want to call this controls. Do this, controls, right? The great thing about text controls are, well, you can create buttons this way. That's why it's good to know some kind of program when you're doing something with iOS or Android. So you can create your own buttons, you can create your own your stuff. And maybe I want some spacing. Well, there's some great tools here that it includes for spacing, right? So I have some spacing tools so I can space it out more. My space is exactly exactly right. Again, I can move my controls kind of to the middle. This is the middle of the screen. I can keep doing that. I can kind of space it out more. So this is my spacing characters. Again, remember there's 300, right? So I probably want to go to something like, a little bigger, but not bigger, because otherwise it's going to go too much, too wide. Maybe something like 200. I can actually type the value in there if I want. Here's 200. Place it. And notice I can use my guides to kind of put it in the exact middle of the right? Okay, cool. This is my little thing. I didn't do too much work there, but this is only 100 by 300. I need to do 2 more of these. I need to make a 200 by 600, 300 by 900. I need to make those images. 2, right? Like if I look at this one, sorry, my original PowerPoint here, this is what I was looking at. It's called, whatever the name of the image is, x.ping and at 3x.ping. And that's a good naming convention for your images. So you know it's 2 times and 3 times. Okay, so it supports this, right? Okay, so let's do that. So let's say this as, we'll just call this controls or control logo dot file, save as. And again, I'm going to put this inside my my MAPD folder. So I'm going to go to Centennial and then week 2, and we'll just make a new folder in there that we'll call images. We'll create that image. We'll make that image that's called, control logo. The convention is making it small, lowercase, right? So there's the first one. It's a ping image. It's my original image. And get rid of that. Now, should I get rid of the image? What should I do? Should I scale up now? The answer is probably not, but I'm not going to take the time to do it, right? I'm just going to go and do it, right? The other way to do it is do this all again. Start off with the bigger one, like 300 by 900, and then scale down. That's the right way to do it. But for now, just to make it easier, there's 2 things I'm going to do. I'm going to unlock these layers here, right? By the way, I can these things now so you can see what it looks like with different backgrounds and so on. That's really kind of cool and important. I'm going to select all, so all the layers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten everything. So there's going to be 1 layer for a second, okay? So I know this is what my app is going to look like, right? So 1 layer. There's no more than 1 layer here. This is good, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to also crop everything outside of this. So see how there's an extra image up here like this where I can move it around? Or I want to crop all the extra information to reduce the file size, right? There is a modify canvas, which trims everything down to the exact canvas itself. So there's nothing outside of it. All that extra information has been cropped away. It's cut. Now I'll save that again. So I'll save my control logo as is, right? So there's no other layers, no other information. I'm kind of reduce the size a little bit if I can, right? And then I'll try to do it again. So I'm kind of file. I want to kind of make this much bigger, right? And what you can do with the canvas, you can change the whole canvas size and image size. If I go image size, you can go, and again, I can also tie this together where it says constrain proportions. So if I change this to 200, notice that it changes it automatically to 600. Right, there it is. This 200, but this is why these programs are really good, right? So it's a little bit better. Now again, it did a bicubic increase, so it's not bad, not optimal though. It should be the other way around. It should kind of reduce. All right, so if I go to save as, and again, instead of control logo, and it's at. And again, if you look at the standard, lowercase, right, at 2x. And we'll do it again. So we'll say modify canvas size, or sorry, image size, and we'll go 300 by 900, right? Which will make this thing like 12.5 inches by 4 inches, like a massive image. But for larger screens, it's okay, right? And then we'll say File, Save As, 3 times, right? There we go. We got our 3 images. Yay! All the work that we would have done if we would have just used the Apress logo, we want to make our own. We're not making an Apress application. We're making Tom's application or your application, right? And I can kind of kill fireworks for now. All right, so we've done this, but what it says here is to drag and drop within inside the XC assets, which is what I really want to do. That's the next step, right? Because I want to be able to use those things. Code, here it is. And I need to swim to my File Explorer, right? Here's my File Explorer for week 2. Here are my images. You guys told, what can I do? How can I do this? Do I select them all? Do I select one at a time? What do I do? The whole image folder, right? Why would I want to do that, right? And if I did that, is there a disadvantage to doing the whole image folder as opposed to well, here's what, let's try both. Let's try the image folder. So here's my image folder, drag and drop. Yay, control logo. Doing anything? And it says control logo, and it gives, look, it publishes 1x, 2x, 3x automatically because, right? Okay, let's get rid of that. So I'm going to delete this thing. So remove select item. Okay, let's try it again. I could do it individually too, like this. Just drag and drop those things. Bam, control logo. Either way, you're only going to have one file on the left, right? And then a bunch of these on the right. You don't have to break it off with a folder. The folder just organizes it. So if you have a bunch of different things inside your folder, this is probably easier because there's only one thing, right? Okay, so now that I have this, I can use this in my, right, which is going to be my logo. I want to attach an image view, right, to my application. So here's in my main storyboard. Drag and drop an image view in here. So if I look at the image view, so I go image, in my image view, I want to drag and drop it in. Okay. Now, what is this the right size? Do I know if it's the right? Like, should I just say, should I just accept? What size should I make it? Should I care, or should I just choose the image? Right? That look right? Something wrong there? Does it look the same as my controls that I use? Right? What's wrong? Well, here, look at the content mode. Scale to fit. Spec fit. Right? That's more like it, isn't it? Right? You want to keep the same aspect ratio. Scale to fit. Scale to fit actually is incorrect. Now this is something wrong too. Look at there's the image view is actually bigger out of here, right? So there's other options too, right? How do I make this? Is there a quick way of setting up my? It says show front. The image height is already there, right? 240 width by 128 height. What's the right thing to do? What should I do? Make it right, because that's the size, and so it's all encompassed. I don't have to give it a border like that, right? So I go 1/300, and I should rescale 100. Doesn't matter, it's there, right? Now I want to put it somewhere in the middle, and I'm going to use my guides to do that by default, right? So it's got to be somewhere up here. This is where my image is going to go. If I just run like this, did I do something wrong? Should I have put on some constraints right now? Is that the right thing to do for me to put constraints on my application? Should I put my application, my constraint? I talked about this earlier. Should I put my application? That's too big. Let's go into scale and go back to 33%. Should I put my application on iPhone 7? Should I attach my application on here like this, like automatically? Is this going to do what I want? Hey, where's my image? How come it's off? How come it's not in the middle? Right? because Xcode is trying to do automatic. That's what it's trying to do, right? It's trying to figure out how to use automatic constraints on compile time. That's no good. Explicit. If you're not explicit, Xcode is going to do whatever it wants. So don't try and run your app like this. Yeah, you can build it, but look, there's something wrong here. So what to do? We did this last time, review. So if I'm going to go back, quit the simulator for a second, and I'm going to go back. First of all, I don't want to run it on my iPhone 7S, 7 Plus. I want to run it on iPhone 6 because that's what I have. Okay, so this is my iPhone 6. But who cares about that? What do I do here that I do from my constraint perspective? How do I add constraints? We did this exercise last week. You just did it today with your buttons. What do I do a constraint? What? Okay, I could. How about this pin down here? Right? Does this do anything? Is there a way of adding suggested constraints without, these buttons down here? Buttons down here, right? There's some buttons. So I could add a constraint, right? I could talk about what these are, right? Width and height. Here's width and height of 300 and 100, right? With an aspect ratio. I want to keep my aspect ratio, that's for sure. I never want to kill my aspect ratio when I change screens. So that I want to have it in. That has to be a constraint, my aspect ratio. To my height, that's something different. I don't need to have, maybe I won't be 100 by 300, but my aspect ratio, that's important, right? It might be 200 by 600. It might be 300 something else on another screen, right? Okay, so that's one. So I could do that, right? That's a constraint. It's red, but it's a constraint. What other constraints can I add in? How do I add horizontal constraints and all that kind of stuff? Is there a button or some kind of key combination that I can use to press, right? Control, click, drag, right? So if I control, click, drag to over here, right? I could say leading space to container margin, right? Center vertically in container. How about that? Container, I like that one, right? That's one. How about this one? Center horizontally. Could I do the same thing? Can I kind of control click this way too? Right? Center horizontally in containers. That takes care of those two constraints, right? What about this? What the hell is this? Right? By the way, I'm adding one constraint at a time, which I told you not to do, right? So what is this right? I could do to make it better? What if I click the pin now? Would that allow me to do things like update constraint constants or reset the suggested constraints? How about that one? This is for selected views. Or this, update constraints or reset the suggested constraints for my all views. What happens if I do this? Here, this work I just did with adding a constraint. What would it do? It's going to add its own, right? It's going to make it whatever it's going to happen. I don't even know if that's going to be right. Let's take a look and see what happens. Run the simulator. Here it is again, right? What is it going to look like on my phone? That's a whole other thing, right? It's going to look right. That's a good thing. What about if I move it? If I change my hardware situation, if I rotate right, how does that look? That looked my aspect ratio. But what about if I want to make this bigger, right? I got to go into size classes, right? If I want to make this bigger, maybe my logo, so it's really big on this size for whatever. I don't want to, but I'm saying, right? Okay. So it looks like no matter what I do here, what about if I change, iPhones? Would it still work? Well, yeah, because I've just selected, the way to do it, right? I'm going to add other things there. Is it going to mess up my constraints? Yeah, it's going to mess up my constraints 100%. Then I got to do this whole thing again. What a pain in the ass. Do it one time. All right, I'm going to stop. So I've got this piece in here. I'm going to kind of hide this piece because I don't care about debugging right now. This piece to give myself more real estate. It's a party outside, okay? The party outside. I probably won't be able to hear them anyway. But all right, so I've got my controls in place. And again, I've done this piece, but take a look at my design. So without doing the PowerPoint, I want to add a name, a label, right, and a text box. Another label label and a text box. Do this with me here. Their name and a text box and a number and a text box. And I want to put them somewhere underneath the logo, right? That's what I want to do. Name and number. What do I do next? So again, I'm going to go back down here, get rid of this, right? And we're going to search for label, right? And I'll put this up there. Here's my label, first label. And this will be called name, right? So I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to probably do this in this thing, right? This is where this thing happens, right? Label, that doesn't make any sense. I want to call it name with a colon, right? Because that's what this has. This has name and a colon and number and a colon, right? Now, remember I told you I can just kind of option drag, right? Option drag will copy this stuff. Can I do that? Can I make these the exact same size? If I make this bigger, will this be bigger? Can I match the size of these things somehow? This would be number, right? So name and number. How come this shrunk down? What happened here, right? How can I make these the same size? Is there a way of doing that by shift clicking? Can I do that somehow, right? Is that the way to do it? What other way can I do it? Anybody? Control drag from one to another. I want to make it the same size as a number, yeah? Right? Because it doesn't make sense that this one should be smaller than this one, right? So if I control drag from one to another, what does it say, right? Equal widths, right? But that didn't do anything. You told me to do something and it's not working. What else? Vertical. What I'm doing here is setting up constraints, right? That's not what I want. Is there another way of doing that? I could just drag it, right? Same size, right? So if I kind of undo, once I drag these handles, it should show me the size. That's another way to do it. So I could do it by eye like that, but there's another way of doing it. Text boxes, right, or text views. So if I go to text, right, here's my text field or text view. Which one should I use, text fields or text view? What did I see here? Text field or text view? Text field, right? So text field is one. Up, right? Like it shows in the picture. I want to kind of line it up so it's the same in the same line as this one. Right? I want to give it a little bit more space so it doesn't kind of override this one. This option drag. I can see that I can start setting up my user interface to be almost the same. And I kind of want to line it up. You know what? I'm thinking probably underneath the logo to make it more balanced. I don't know if I did that over here. You see? Now I did. There we go. So kind of underneath the logo, I'm kind of making it so that it's all balanced up, name and number, and a couple of text fields, right? I don't have to read the PowerPoint to do this. Come on, you guys can do it. You and I can do that. We just did a calculator. We don't need a PowerPoint to kind of put stuff on. One thing that it does here, the slider is a little funny, right? Semester? I'm going to look at you again. Huh? Huh? Yes? Okay. So what was the thing with the slider that was kind of funny, that messed you up, right? Sliders are weird. Okay, let's take a look. What if I do a slider? So look at a slider, right? So here's a slider, and I put it on. Here's my slider. Ooh. Proportionally, right? And I want to kind of drag it to here, let's say, just to make it the same size, right? All right. How come I don't have a label here? What's wrong? How do I? Should I add a label in there? Does it have to be its own label? Let's take a look what it looks like. Look, there's a label right here. The slider and the label, nothing to do with each other, right? So I got to give some room for the slider with the label. So probably going to move down to here like this. Probably take the same thing that I have here, right, and kind of option drag, right, and then I'll adjust it, right? And I want to try and put it in so that the slider itself says something like what it does here. By default, it should be 50%, right, in the middle, right? So let's put that in there. So let's put, instead of number, right, and I can drag this a little bit to the left so I don't need so much space, something like that. I can also want to probably center this thing, right? So it should be centered inside the text itself. I leave these alone, or should I kind of kind of justify these things? Right? Let me see what these guys did. Yeah, they write justified, right? From a UI perspective. I can put it a little closer, but that's probably as close as I want to get. So far, I've got my sliders and my text boxes and my labels. Are we still good? Do I need constraints? Yeah. This stuff that I just done, right? Because if I run this thing now, whoa, I'm in trouble, right? What's it going to do? It might run, right? But then all this stuff might be weird, right? So far, so good. This is not going to change right now. What about if I change, right? See, did that work exactly the way I wanted it? Nope. This should be over here, right? In the middle. So that didn't work out. So I gotta add some. So I'm showing you this only because you should know this stuff. This is all like, again, review, right? So I got my controls, my slider. Add some constraints later. All right, what else? What else do we have to have in there? I'm just looking at the requirements here. I got a couple of, what's this called? Switch. What's this called? There's a couple of buttons here. Huh? Segment is what it is, right? So if I look at a segment control, if I go segment to control, right? And if I scroll down here, again, I don't need this part, but if I scroll down here and if I look at the interface, it looks like the segmented control is just underneath the slider. There's a bit of space, more space than I have here between the slider and the label and things that I have here. So I could just a little bit, because I want them to kind of be, within proportion of what I've seen here in my user interface, right? Without following instructions. I can follow instructions for sure. If you're, I don't know, do you guys read the map? If you go to the forum, I mean, nowadays I use Google for everything. I have to say, I have to be honest with you. Now I Google everything. When I want to go somewhere, even if it's somewhere I've been before, I Google it, man. I put it on Google Maps on my car and I go. I do that because it has the best traffic patterns, right? I can avoid traffic that way and cut time down, actually, even for ways I know how to get home. Sometimes it'll tell me to take another street. I'm like, it says there's construction or something. But in the old days, before Google Maps, I never read a map. I just kind of figured it out. I kind of looked. I said, I think I know where I'm going to go, and I just drove there. Kind of the same thing right here, right? I'm not going to read the thing so often. I look at the user interface and I'm trying to figure it out. In real life, would I do that? Kind of look at a picture and try and figure it out? Is that the way we do our user interfaces? This is like UI UX, No, for sure not. We specs, UI UX specs that tell me what the ratio is, where the exact location of this thing is on the user interface. I wouldn't guess. When we do stuff for clients, we're more exact. We have a spec sheet, right? Okay, so I'm going to pull this in. Notice I'm using the built-in guides just to center it from the get-go. Switches and button. That's what it says. Switches and button. So the first thing I'm going to kind of go in there. Switches differently, and this is button. And then look, it's aligned the other way around. There's blue here and over here. Is there a way of changing which segment is first? Yeah, up here, right? Segment. That's segment 1 to be first, right? Segment 1 is button. Segment 0. This is just switching around, but this one I want selected, not the other one. This is, again, there's a bunch of controls here, and by the way, these controls make no sense for what I don't know what we're building here. I'm just going with this design. There's a button still. There's a do something button too, right? Do something, and the do something button is going to go underneath here. It's kind of long. Background image. Background image. This is not a standard button. Look, right? It uses the background image that gets stretched. That's what it's using. It's stretching, control here, right? By default, if I pull in a button, here's my button, and I pull it in there, right? The button's going to look like this, even if I stretch it. And can I make it look like this? Like the old, this is an old style iOS button. But actually, if you look through this PowerPoint, bottom when they get the buttons, like way, way, way back down here, and you'll see it. They talk about a couple things. One of them is this, which is this, this image asset that we're going to add into assets, X assets, this white button. What they do is it actually slices up the image, right? So that way your borders can stretch without stretching. So the borders stay the same size. This is a common thing to do with a lot of interface designers. Okay, so this is one of the things we can do with buttons. For now, because I don't have my asset and I'm not going to create it now, I want to kind of get to the point where I can get some functionality going with this thing. Okay, do something. This is the button that's going to say do something. So leave it as is. So this button does. And I want to stretch to fit the button, and I want to put some constraints. Remember, this is the kind of like the constraints day. Kind of the same. I want to make this thing as large as my switches, at least in the top there, just to make it even, right? So if I kind of center it, it's centered with my good UI, UX kind of thing. I'd probably make this a little larger as well, just to match up with what it says in my spec, right? This is kind of what I'm doing. Now I also need a couple of switches, right? Here are a couple of switches, right? And when I on switches, right? I see switches, but when I click on button, I'm using it as a toggle, I only see the button. So this is really, we're using this as a switch, right? So this is the button, right? When this is selected, I see the button, and then I see the switches. So I got to decide which one is default. So here's my default. If I go switches, right, and if I make that enabled and select, and this one, can I disable this? Here's the option. I disable this. Is there a way of disabling my button? Is there something? Yeah, there is. There's this one, right? You can hide the button by default. And if I run this thing the way it is for now, without any kind of constraints, I'm going to put constraints on in a second, that I can hide the button when it comes up. There it is. So no button. A button, it's going to come on. That's a little bit of logic to do that, right? Okay, so that's something I need to program, right? But I want to put the switches in there, right? So I'm going to put a switch. So my switch, here's my left switch, right? Up here are the same size as the button, and I'll copy this one. I can option draw inside. There's my right switch, so left switch and right switch, and I got my button. Now if I run it, I should see the switches, but not the button. It should be hidden because I've clicked it on as hidden. Right? So if I look back at the design, there we go. Switch is there, no button. When I click button, no, the switches should go away, right? From a design perspective. Okay, so those are the things I want. Okay. What else do you see? User interface. This, right? It's kind of some kind of background, but it's not really a background, right? You see what it says here? It says what we want to be doing is action sheet. Some kind of action sheet. What's an action sheet, right? Make a choice. The action sheet is what? It's an alert, right? So it comes up as an alert. But I got a background on my button, and I want to make sure that this background, right, when my action sheet comes up, is it a control that I can put in? Can I just go action? No, I can't. It's programmatic, right? The action sheet. Okay. How about the background? How do I change the background of the app? Is there something I can do first? Is it could I put it as an image? Should I put it as part of the background? From a layout perspective, what should I do? What's the right thing to do? What would you recommend? Anybody? We're building the application together, guys. Come on. It could change the background, right? What? This view here. What's that? What does that represent? That's the whole container, right? View is that, and that could be a good thing. But what if I have something else? Is there something else I can use to as a backdrop for everything else, like a background container? Is there something like that? Could I make it with something else? What do you recommend? Or should I do it here in the view? I don't know. Let's see. What other kinds of views do I have? Right? I have a view controller. You know, there's a bunch of different things here. Navigation, tab bar, split views. Or I can do another page view controller. Could. Like another view, like this. Right? Another container. Right? Why would that be a good thing to do if we're going to do it? It's like a container within a container. It kind of actually, I have to be warning, it actually renders a little slower, right? That's one. And the other reason, that's another reason why I may or may not want to do that. What's the other thing I can do? I can hide the whole view, right? If I really want to, I can mimic having more than one screen without having multiple, like a navigation container if I really want to, right? Because I have the whole view, and then that view lives inside the other view. Take it away. For now, let's just keep it simple, but I could do it. That's what I'm saying. And what I want to do is change the background. The background image right now is the current color. And if I want to kind of match up what that color is, right? How do I get that color palette? Can I click this other button? Now I have this, right? This thing is an image. I'm going to cheat now. Can I cheat a little bit? Here's how I'm going to cheat. Copy. I don't know what that color is, right? Now I want to make the client happy, right? So I'm going to new sample, right? And now I got the color, right? I don't know what the color is. Let's see what it is. It's F5, BE3E, right? That's what it is. Copy this. And by the way, will it do hexadecimal colors? Can I do hexadecimal colors? Or is it something else in Xcode? What does Xcode do for me? Decimal colors in here? Is there something else I can choose? How about this? The sliders, right? That'll do it. Right there, right? So I could go back here. Fireworks, if I can get there. Sorry. Cycled the wrong way. I could do that and grab all this, copy it, go over here. Actually, I've copied too much, right? I could go back over here if I'm smart. I wasn't smart. And paste it, but I'm going to get the extra information in there too. Get rid of that. That's okay, right? There is right here. Right here, right? But I got sometimes that won't work depending on how Xcode works. Be careful, right? And I'd rather do it. And then this RGB slider, there's RGB and CMYK. Anyone know? Color theory, right? 101, right? See, so RGB, right? Adds things together, you get white. CMYK, subtractive color theory, right? Where you take things away. Way of doing things, and it looks different. CMYK colors and RGB colors, different. A lot of people use CMYK for, RGB is typically the way we do it. We can also use the other ones, but this is fine. So is this enough? Did I do this right? How come it didn't change anything? Well, I got to do that, right? On my background. Does that look right? Something wrong? Align properly. It's not the right size because I'm just guessing, right? Okay, I've got my interface. Now I need to put my constraints on, right? First interface goes on. I did some funny stuff with my constraints earlier. I want to put all my constraints on. What do I need for every user control? What's the right thing to do? Every user control. How do I build my user interface, my constraints for my user interface? And I want to make it so that it works without going into size classes for landscape and portrait. What's the fast way to do it, right? I want to get it done automatically, right? As opposed to doing things, right? What's the right thing to do? Come on, guys. Okay, where do I go for that? Do I go to the pin? Do I have to highlight anything? Right? Should I highlight all these like this? Should I highlight that? And then go to the pin? This? Is that what you mean? That's pretty fast. What's the other thing I need to do though? I need to do one more thing. I need to update. How do I do my edit frame, right? How do I do that? Remember, some people ask me, why do I go to edit? What do I do to edit the frames here, right? Is there some way of getting my, adding the frame for everything else? What's the other way? You did it last time, Laura. Not the shift control, thing that you talked about, right? Frame, right, for this thing. I don't need to do anything. I'm good. Okay, let's try it out. This one, the little pin icon, right? Well, it says clear constraints. I don't see anything, right? There's a missing thing. I need to do something else, even if I select everything. So going with what you just said, Reza, I can go here. Frame, I don't see that.
There's like a refresh.
No, it's
Is it disabled? No.
Jasmine was saying, Jasmine, are you talking? Are you saying something? Where should I go? Yes. Under editor, right? Editor, and I go to where? Issues, right? Where I say, but wait a minute, what's going on here? How come I don't see update frames? Oh. So here's my view, the whole container that contains everything else, right? Editor, and then I go to resolve auto layout issues. Wait a minute, what's going on here? I don't see it with nothing to update, right? How come? Because everything's set. Constraints are there. Look, if I click on anything, there's constraints. The way constraints work, quick way in iOS is you have to have at least 2 constraints for every control, right? Why? If it's relative to some other control. Remember, this is relative layout. Relative layout, right? That's what it is. If you think about it, it just, right? So it's relative to everything else. So this is relative to the top. See, that's the first constraint. See, and there's another constraint just because, and there's a bunch of other constraints that are connected to it. But typically, if you think about it, these constraints are constrained to this one. What about to the sides, right? I don't see any constraints going this way. Look, there's this. Oh, that's kind of neat. That kind of does that one. And that's what it does. It kind of found the outermost objects, this one and this one, added constraints here, and then we can create constraints more inside. I'm not going to look right because we haven't done anything else. We haven't done any kind of size classes or anything. So if I go to run it now, let's build it. It's going to look okay. Okay, this is where it's like I can make it look okay at this point, right? It's not perfect by any means. Okay, now let's try it. So if I want to try it, so I want to change my, does that look right? Kind of. I'm not sure if this looks right. Look at that. I can't make this bigger. Where's my button? I don't see my switches, my button. These things are too close together. I want to update my frame, and I have to work on this to make it look right. It worked, but not really. It kept the same distance, right? It didn't do much here. This isn't right. And that's probably one of the things that you're getting. You're getting this thing where it says, well, it kind of looks okay, Tom. It does rotate, but no, it doesn't really. Because it kept the same ratio, and it shouldn't. It should kind of change the constraints. Depending on your view, it should modify your constraints so that they, they rebalance everything. What do I do to fix that problem? How do I change it for how do I go into size classes? You guys did this whole adaptive layout thing last week, right? Okay, I'm not going to answer. You guys aren't answering. I won't answer. Let's go back to this now. I want to make it so that these controls all work. So when I enter my name, that's one thing, and my name and number, but this slider, let's make the slider work. So when I slide this back and forth, I need some default values for my slider. So I got to click on my slider. Value for my slider. What should it be? Maybe I can make it 0, but it really depends. That's the answer, right? Here I got 50. Chances to 100, right? Or 0 to 100, right? But let's make it so that the maximum instead of 1 is 100. In that 50, this position, right? Okay. We can also use images, by the way. Take a look at this. These things allow you to put in images. They allow you to do all. You don't have to use a standard slider that comes with iOS, right? There's other options here in terms of color and tracking and everything. It's amazing. What's this? That's the default value. This can't be 0.5. It's got to be 50, right? That's something we have to set from the get-go, or else when you do your slider here, it doesn't mean 50 here, right? Okay. Things. If I definitely need a outlet for my text fields, I need outlets for those. I don't care about my labels. They don't need outlets. I'm going to do anything with them. They need outlets. I need an outlet, some kind of outlet for this. But oh, what happened here, man? Hey, look. I can modify my slider. What happened? Right? How come it? Oh, it's back to normal now. I need outlets for my slider. I need an outlet for my button, for sure, some kind of action for my button. When I click on these things happen, these things change. Some kind of outlet for my, or action for my do something button. This do something button in the middle. This is something that's wrong. Let's at least, can I change the background to make it look a little better? That's like this yellowish color, right? That doesn't make any sense. So let's make the button background. And if I scroll down, you can see that I get to view, and here's my background. Good complementary color that works. Maybe like this blue, right? So I could choose the blue, standard colors, right? My iPad, my iPhone SDK, I could choose those colors, but that doesn't. I could choose one of these colors. I could choose a standard color, like one of these. Let's just use this one. That's not right. What color is that? That color there. It's a standard color, right? How do I get to that? This thing, like we said, the picker, right? I could go to there and pick the color, right? There's the color. Now my picker, now my button's the same color as this one. And now I can make my foreground color, so that's my background. And what about my foreground? My text color can't be this blue anymore. Blue or default blue, right? I probably want to make it white or something else, right? How do I get back to that other color? How do I move from my text color being, choose this, white? And that's kind of really hard to read too, right? Shouldn't I make the style for my font a little bigger? I'm gonna mess up my layout, right? So what else? What about style? How about I want to go for a different style? I want to have a bold kind of looking thing. Is there a way, is there somewhere that I can change my font style down here, right? I mean, I've got my state config, default, my font itself, my font, there it is. A little better, right? A little better. Same thing with this. These are kind of really hard to read too. What does the design tell us to do? Look at that. That's not right. Who did that? Why did they program? There should be something I can read. I can't read those buttons, right? Look what happens when I really do this thing. Just from a UI perspective, do you think this is right? Take a look here. Is that right? I don't like that. I mean, it's kind of, you know, one or the other. It's okay, but it probably would have liked something that's more legible. Okay, so I need some actions and outlets for this stuff. Again, the way I would do it is I would go to my, get rid of some of these extra screens here to give myself as much room, as much bandwidth here as I can. I'd like to try and do this, right? And do I really need this? Probably not right now, right? But what I want to try and do is drag and drop some of these controls, the ones that I care about, view controller. I don't care about this. Probably I'm not going to use did receive everyone, so I can probably get rid of that from the get-go. So just like I did last time. View did load, though, I want to change, right? Like I may put something in there that I need. So let's leave that alone. So when the view loads, I may want to set a default value for something. Yes. Maybe I want to make a default value for this label, right? Because there something might happen, right? So how do I do that? So first of all, for this label, so I'm going to kind of drag and drop. Oh man, what happened? Oh yeah, isn't it option drag? Is it control drag? It's not going to hurt to try, guys. Like this kind of logic is very easy. So again, outlet, it's definitely a view controller. It's a UI label. I want to call it something like the slider label. That's what it is, right? Connect. There it is. So that's my slider label. So that's this. I want to, in my view did load, I probably want my slider label to have a default value, right? Which is like 50. The slider label, right? Slider label dot text. I want to make that equal to 50 right from the get-go as the default. No semicolons. Whether I have it in there or not, boom, it replaces it with 50, right? Just by default. Okay. Okay. Now let's do this behavior first. This is the one that's new. We haven't done this this week, right? I want to make an action for this thing, an action event. Basically, it's an event handler. So what I want to do is put it below my view did load, right? That's what I want to do. We'll handle the other ones. We'll handle the gesture. I think the two things I want to get out of today's session is I want to handle the buttons being hidden and shown, and I also want to do this gesture recognition. Click away and it goes back down. I want to be able to handle that, right? Okay. Let's do this. So the slider, right? Again, if I control drag into down here below this viewed load function somewhere, right? An action, right? Again, it's not going to be of type any. It's going to be a UI slider. It kind of detects which one it is. Sender argument in there. I always like to have my sender argument. You can avoid it by clicking none, but I don't like it. I like having my sender argument a lot because you never later on. My name, which is going to be something to do with the slider moving, right? So on slider moved or on slider slid. I don't know, something like that makes sense, right? We'll call it on slider touched. We'll call it because it's a touch action. On slider touched or moved or you want to call it, right? And connect be action, right, for the slider, which is interface builder action. Now, what I wanted to do is when the slider moves, the right action. Oh, I'm touching it. I'm clicking on it to get that touch event happening. Is there something else I got to do with the slider? I've got to change the type of event somehow. That with the thing, because this is just something happens with the slider, and is it going to be okay? It says sender UI slider, but it's going to activate the event too, right? So what does it mean when it changes the value, right? So how do I do that? How do I change the event type? How do I see the event type here? Well, it's here, right? So if I click on the slider, and if I look at this for the events, you can see which one I have, right? Is this value changed, right? That's different than the touch. It's not touch up inside. The default event that gets generated when you do a control drag and you create your event handler automatically with Xcode is the one that makes most sense for the control. It's value change, which means when my value changes, the event gets triggered. If I wanted to touch up inside, right, then I'd have to add that event in there as well. That's not the event that I'm doing though. So it's not touched. It should really be on slider, changed. Right? Okay. If that's the case, how do I change the name? Huh? Yeah.
Can we change the event like right now? We have the value changes. How can we use the touch one?
Okay, let's bring that back. So what would you think that I could do? What would you do? Okay, so if I went touch up inside, okay, so ticket, does that do it? How about over here on the right? It's kind of hard to see because my screen space. But I got this little button right here, right? Could I just drag over here? Now you can see I got both events, right? So whenever I touch up inside, it triggers. And whenever I, do the other one. If I want to disconnect the event, I can connect whatever event I want in here, which is really useful, right? Not just the default value changed event, right? I want to rename this thing. I want to refactor, rename. That's the right way to do it, right? And I want to rename this thing. Oh, it says Xcode can only refactor C and Objective C. Uh-oh. What am I going to do now? How can I rename this thing? Should I rename it? Can I just like double click and rename it? Would that work? So what I need to do is I need to go back. I need to kill the thing, right? Put it back. Is there another way to rename this thing? And then kill the event? Good. I could do it this way. There's a couple ways I can do this. This is the answer, right? So the first way is, right, if I look at the slider, right, and I look at the event list, right? That's the first thing, right? Then I can rename this thing whatever I want. Like I can call this on slider changed, right? On slider, I could do this. Now tell me if this is going to work, right? Could I then, by clicking on the slider, can I go back down on what I did before, take that value changed, and point to it? Yeah, right? That will work. That's one way of doing it. Right? You can go through there and change it. But refactor rename, like it said, you can see that that would be the first choice. If I was working with Visual Studio, refactor rename, right? Or if I was working with Android Studio, refactor rename. Not so here. All right, so now we've done this event. We got our slider changed event on slider changed. That when the slider changes, my text label changes to the value. Uh-oh, how do I do that? So I want to change my slider label text. I want to make it equal to, let me just get rid of some of this stuff so it's easier to see. I want to make it equal to the value of this object. The object. Okay, I could. But the sender dot, would that be the right thing? Right? I could do the sender dot value, but now I got to convert it. How do I convert here? Because this isn't right. I can't convert to text. What do I need to do? What was that? Cast. Okay, how do I cast? Right. Okay, I could do that. So you're talking about like parentheses, like the old way, like this? Like a C way of doing it. That we don't do that here. That doesn't work. Tell me. I bet. Oh, come on. You have to do this? Yeah. Close it again. That's it. Yeah. Talking about Swift 3, right? What's another way of doing this? Yeah, you could do that way, but what about if doing, we could do this backslash stuff, right? We could do this way. We could go this. So first we put this in quotations, right? That would work. This, can we do this too? Isn't that something we can do? This? It's called string interpolation. It's another way of doing it. This is actually a nicer way of doing it, right? Well, it's not giving me an error, right? Error, right? Okay, let's see if it works. So sender value, whatever. If you guys are right, it's going to take whatever value is and can over here. Let's see if that works. Run. Right? We're brave. We don't care. Even if it crashes, who cares? Right? We're just building as we go. Oh, man. Oh, man. What the hell? Give me this. I don't want this crap. Come on. This isn't what I paid for. You guys, you told me I'm supposed to be able to do this. Why is it doing this? This fluctuating this value, doing all this stuff. How come? Well, it's returning a floating point, number one, which I don't want. Like single digit values, number one. That's what I wanted here. And then what's the other problem? Because I'm returning more than one digit here, that I've kind of made it a label, not a text value or text field, right? Because I'm changing this, it's changing the size of my label, and because of that, because there's constraints label, it's also rebalancing everything because of my constraints. Remember automatic constraints? Bad. But it worked. I mean, the value changed. So how do I make it so it's an integer, not this? How do I change that to an integer? Change that. I like it. How do I do? What's the conversion C version C kind of thing where I want to round or change or convert to an integer, right? The same way I did before. I could make int. Okay, so let's try this again. So could I do this? Could I say something like, I want to take this value, I want to use an integer. Is that the same way? Can I do this like this? Would that work? Uh-oh. Oh, wasn't an error anymore. Let's try it again. Is that going to fix my layout issues, though? I don't know if that's going to fix my layout issues because it's going to fluctuate, right? If I start moving it around, and I go down to 1. Good. Oh, yee, right? So how do I fix that? Make it 100. That's a quick fix, right? like this. Watch. So I go back in here, instead of making it 50 by default, make it 100. How's that going to break my layout? What's going to break my layout? For sure. For sure. It's going to break my layout. Oh, yeah. My layout 100%, right? Not even 50%, 100%. How do I get in there? How do I, how do I see this thing a little better so you can see? Like, first of all, did it kill my layout? It's okay for me right now, right? Why am I making it 100 and not 50? Well, because I already did that up here, right? Look, I kind of knew that was going to happen, so I make it 50 in there. But I made it 100. Is that going to fix my problem? No, right? Because it's going to change the layout. Change the layout. It's going to change the size of the area, rebalance the whole thing. Because it's going to expect 100. When I go down to 50, it's going to go boom. It's going to go from 3 characters to 2 characters. So this isn't going to fix my right. If I show you what it looks like, look, here it is. Boomity boom. It comes up, and we think it's beautiful, but it's not. Right? Even though it changed it, I changed it by hand, didn't change. What do I do? How do I fix this without, I got to do I got to do some layout issues, right? There's some layout stuff. Could I go in here, first of all, in here, right? And look what it says. It says aspect, change that, or should I make it a width and height, a default width and height? Like, what should I do? I need to add a constraint. First of all, let's have a manual constraint. Like, where's my aspect ratio constraint? Is that in there? How about all the constraints? Can I see them all? Look, here are all the constraints that I have on the left. There's a ton of constraints in here. Slider labeled top, right? Here's my switch trailing button. If I click on them, it shows you my constraints that automatically generated, right? So these are all the different ones. Here's my horizontal slider leading thing here. Slider label bottom, slider label top, right? What about other things? Can I put another kind of constraint in there? Would that kill my constraints? And I said, okay, I want to add my own constraints. So I want to say my width and my height, I want it to be standard. It's never going to change. It's always going to be, we'll make it 30. How about that? 30 by 30. Is that going to kill my stuff? Is that going to mess my constraints up? Where's my little warning up here? First of all, did I add my constraint? Right? Oh, did it get added? Click add constraints. It doesn't do anything, right? I can monkey around with this as much as I want. Width and height. I need to add 2 constraints, right? Oh, right, for sure. I just added 2 constraints in there for width and height. Let's see if that works. I'm being facetious, but I'm trying to show you the work that can be done after you've got your user interface right? So, yeah, see? Right. Oh, what happened? How come it sticks? Kind of weird, right? This around, right? Because I added my constraint in there. That particular constraint wasn't destructive because it didn't change the relative distance between one option and the other. Okay. Part working. How about this part? So if I click this, I want it to bring up my keyboard. Look, the keyboard pops up, right? And then I can type in there, right? But what first of all, for me, no, I want to have a done. I want to have a done button, right? Do I have a done button in there? It's just hidden. Let me see if so my device is too big. So let's go with window scale bigger, smaller. All right. Yeah, so there's a return. I want the return to be a done. I don't care about the these things. I want to change my keyboard, and when I click return, drop, or if I click away here, the keyboard will drop. Gesture recognizer. How do I do that? How do I do that? Was that? There's 2 things I need, right? Okay. Let's go in here and check this out. So stop. My keyboard. For control, I'm clicking on. And now I want to have access to this over here, right? And this is, we don't need this right now. So we'll just kill this for now. Okay, so we just have more room for this one. My control. How do I pick a keyboard for my control? I can do it. Where do I go? Is it down here somewhere where there's a keyboard that I can select? Content mode scale to fit, like that. Background, for my background. Where's my keyboard? How can I choose my keyboard? What's the default keyboard that I used? Somewhere here. Yeah, it's somewhere here. Yeah, no problem. Is it here? No. Is it here? Default layout margins and show my rectangle and blah, 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 blah. And these are all my constraints. Yay. Where's my keyboard? I know it's here. Where? There. Oh, there. Well, now what do I want? Do I want ASCII capable numbers and punctuation? Punctuation make any sense, right? Number pad might be okay if I was going to do just numbers. Like a regular ASCII capable, right? And what about my button? My return key is not going to be return key. It's going to say done. So I can choose that kind of keyboard as well. So I can change my key type. You guys have learned last semester, right? You guys did keyboards last semester? Hold on a second. Let me just make my damaged eyes bigger. Auto enable return key. What's this? It's kind of important, right? If I click this on, it kind of does the gesture recognizer for you. That's a cheat. Cheat. All right, let's try this out. So if I was to run this thing now, I got to change the same thing for the other one, right? By the way, tricks. I would probably do my text field first. This one, right? See how it's done? Oh man, what happened? How come my done is not enabled? Look, it's not even enabled. I can do anything else. This is the right one. I also got this. Not now, right? But I can type whatever I want in here, right? And now I can click done, right? And if I click done, how come my keyboard didn't go down, right? That's a problem. So even if I click auto enable return key, who cares? My appearance. What's my appearance on my thing? Dark or light, dark theme or like that, right? So right now my default is if I go dark and if I run it again, and forgive me if I'm going through this really slow, but this is kind of important stuff. If you don't know user interface stuff that's built in, these are keyboards that are built into iOS, right? So it's kind of the dark theme. Notice how it's a little darker. That's the wrong. Now look, when I clicked onto it the first time, if I click here, that's a different keyboard. And if I click here, that's the dark theme. I think the dark theme might go better with my thing. And look, it covers up my buttons. So it needs to go down, right? For this thing. It needs to come down. If I click done, if I click in there and click done, that's got to come down, right? That's got to come down. So this dark theme is cool. My return key is done. I've auto-clicked this one. That's what I want. And it says correction is default. I can also put no if I don't want that, or spelling correction. Capitalization, I can put that in there as well. Lots of really cool things in here. Do that to this. So I might as well just do the same thing. So again, keyboard type is ASCII capable. My appearance is dark, which is what I want. And my return, I should have done that and copied it. Like I said, I'll put this on, and I've got both the same keyboards. Okay. Now, when I type stuff in, I want to have an event. When I type it in and, whatever, I need to have some way of getting values from my text button, right? I've got my name text field and I've got my number text field. I need those two things. I need to create for those, right? So let's do that first. So I'm going to probably put them up here with all the other outlets. Usually I try and combine outlets all at the top. Everyone is different, but that's how I do it. I actually go with the old school of putting all my variables at the top of my code, right, and in a class. Everyone's different, but that's kind of a best practice for me. All the variables should go somewhere on the top. Kind of grab this one, and again, I'm going to control drag under the other one. I want to make this an outlet text field. That's good that it detected that, and I want to call this the name text field, right? That's what it is, and press enter or connect. Do the same thing for this one. So control drag underneath this one, and then do the same thing. So we'll call this the number fields. Long recording, guys. Sorry. I know it's a long recording. Take some space away if I want to add some spaces down here. And then maybe I want to do some kind of commenting, like these are all my variables, right? So, and what kind of variables are these? By default or public? Oh, no, you guys don't even know that. Lots of work to do. Huh? Sure. I'm going to pull instance variables for now because you guys don't even know. Instance variables, right? That's what these things are. This is my view did load method, right? This is what this is. This is my view did load, right? This is view did load. This is a built-in event that occurs with my view loads. My slider changed, and I probably want to put some kind of comments among all these things. Okay, so good. I got some of these things, and then when I click the done button, right, of either one of these things, I want to create, is it an event? Again, one thing to note is if you want to look down here into gesture recognizers, I actually put it in here. So way, way down here, we talked to, and I'm going to make this a little smaller, right? And again, I'll put this PowerPoint up a little later. This talks about the background of the image and then the drawing checkboxes. But what we really want to get into is this stuff down here when it comes to right? This is creating and connecting outlets, and the name field and the number field. Those are in there in Swift. I've just named them differently. They just called it name and number. I've called the name text field. I like putting the whole view because I find it that you can remember. You know what it is. It's text field, name text field, right? So it's a throw. By the way, it's a throwback from when I used to do Android and Windows programming. I always put the name of the control at the end, always, field, because that's not really accurate, right? Everyone's different, but it's my best practice. Okay, so we put these two in there, and now what we have to do is take it away, and in here, right at the bottom, around, for people who are watching, around slide 50, right, exactly slide 50, we want to create this IB action, right? And notice that something that's automatically going to generate this thing, right? So like it says, I want to add the action method in there. So I need to make it an IB action, which is a function. I call it text field done editing, right? Now for us, I'm just going to kind of copy and paste because I have that little snippet, right? Underneath the slide on slider change event, okay? What it's going to say is depending on the sender, right? Depending on the sender, first responder. Okay, what the hell is first responder? What do I mean by this, right? First responder, right, means that, you know, when I click on that text field in the first place, when I click on this thing in real time, right, the first responder is the actual of the application, right? So my keyboard is actually the first responder. Right? It takes control of the first responder, the position, you know, if you will, right? So it's almost like taking control of the application. And I want to resign that control. I want to say, give back control to the application. The actual, the box will drop. Okay, so this is an IB action, but it's not connected to anything. So how do I do that? What's the next step? And if you look at the step-by-step, for me to do this, there's two parts to this thing, right? This is the first part. To connect, and like it says here, the first responder acts as a control with which a user is currently interacting. It's almost like it's right of the application, right? Okay. Now what it says here is single click the name text field and press this button to bring up the connections inspector. I don't need to do that. I do that, right? And then what I want to do is take, like it says, we don't want touch up inside. We want did end on exit. Did end on exit. That's the event. We want to drag and drop that, right, to that particular event that we just made. All right. So again, if I click on this one and I go to my inspector and I click on the events, which is this one, exit, and I want to this thing just like we did last time. So I'm going to take this. I got to click on this little plus. You can't see it here. I want to take this little plus and I want to drag. Oh, how come my thing isn't highlighting? How come it's not working? Anybody? Kind of drag and drop this did end on exit, right? How come it's not working? How come I can't just do this? Well, this is an action. Action right here. So I already got an IB action. How about if I did this? Can I connect it here? Is that something I can do? Or can I connect this? Something I can do? No. Anybody? What would you do differently? Should I rewrite this whole thing and just call it text field done editing? How do I point? This is a built-in IB action. That's what we did before. Notice that there's a little button over here, right? Just like we did before. Click this. There's my thing, and I got all these things I got here. One of the things I got touch up inside. Normally I can go touch up inside in Target, right? By just dragging and dropping. We did that last time. Side, but now I can't touch this part. Why?
I guess there's give a reference to this function first. So drag and drop this reaction function to the text field.
Yeah, right. So that's the first thing. But notice that it says did end, right? Editing did end. Now see what it says here. Editing did end, right? But I want did end on exit. I want this one to go here too. How come I can't target this action? Can I do this? That's not going to be. That's not going to write. That's going to be to the actual event itself, right? And can I actually target these ones too? Look, can I do this? Right? So what's going on there? How come I can only do it with this one? Let's test that one out. So resign first responder. When I didn't do the right one, what happens when I click that done button? So I go here, my done button. I prick it. I kind of bring it up, and I click some stuff here. Click done, and click away. That didn't do it. And it says I can be able to do it, like it says right here. I can drag and drop, right? It says the main storyboard, bring up the single click the name text field, which is what I want, and press this thing to bring up the connection inspector. Just we'll bring it up, and then the next step, circle next to did end on exit to the yellow view controller icon in the storyboard. View controller icon in the storyboard. That's this. Right? Look. Right? Okay, let's fix that. So first we'll go here. We're guessing, right? Kill this one, and now we'll take this did end on exit to this, right? Text edit field, text field done editing with sender, right? Look what it says. Text field done editing with sender. That's good. I want to do the same thing for the other one. This is neat. Now, why is this working? For each one of them, and click this one. And how would this work? That's a lot different than the other one, right? Because this special event did end on exit is something you can't just tie directly to an event. You got to do it this way. When I click onto it, it should work differently. Done. Lower. So that's one scenario. Scenario is when I touch something else, anything else in the background. That's common behavior. It should drop that as well. That's the other thing that happens. And we'll touch that one as well. Let's try that out. So down inside the readings, which I'm going to put up later on, it's not just this one. So closing the keyboard when done is tapped, touching the background to close the keyboard, and it's very similar to that, right? What we want to do is we want to create our own gesture recognizer. That's what it's called. A couple of ways to do that. Well, the 4 steps that you have to do is create an instance of the gesture recognizer. You have to configure it, link it to the view, just like we've done just now. Action method in your view controller. Same kind of idea, right, that we have normally, right? Well, there's a trick, right? There's something called the tap gesture recognizer that's built in. Come here and start typing tap, right? Here's my tap recognizer, right? And what I want to do is drag and drop it into my storyboard like this. What it's going to do, this tap recognizer, right? Notice on the left, right? Or in my, right? It's here, right? It actually adds it in as part of my my scene controller here, right? This whole scene has the tap gesture recognizer on here. So that's number one. So we have an actual something that's here. We could also do it by programmatically, and we're going to do that later on. We're going to talk about gesture recognizers in more detail, making your own gesture completely, some kind of really weird swipe or swirl or whatever. You can do all kinds of stuff. Okay, cool. So we've done, that's the first step. So we dragged it from there onto the storyboard. That's the first step. Step two. So when we select it, right, like it says, it looks at, it's configurable, and it talks about how many taps and how many touches it has. Click onto it. On the right, if I go to here, you can see that it says recognize one tap and one touch. You can have as many, whatever combination you want in here. That's cool, right? So I can say, I want to double tap, close the keyboard, right? Instead of single tap. Okay, so that's the one. We're going to leave this as in general what it is, right? And we're going to leave those as well. And then there's a piece of code, right? Recognizer to the action method. We're going to control drag from the recognizer to the document outline this way. Okay. Hold on a second. From the recognizer and the document outline to the line just above the closing brace. Okay, that's easy to do. So we're going to go down here like this. Closing brace. We're going to take this, control drag, poof. And now we got to decide what that is. Is it an outlet or an action? An action, right? Here's an action. Here's the UI. That's the one we want. And we want to name this correctly. I'm just going to go with this name because they say on tap gesture recognized. I like that. On tap gesture recognized, and click connect. All right, there we go. So there's this. And now we're just going to resign first responder again, depending on what the sender is. Whatever the sender is giving us, we resign for first responder. That's really what we're doing in our code, right? But we're going to do it to both. Find this sender object, we're going to just do the name field and the number field, which in our case is not the name field, the number field. It's actually the text field, right? Text field. And then resign first responder. Sorry, let me just get rid of some of this so you can see it better. With a number, text field, resign first responder. All right. And again, resign first responder, the control. So it kind of relinquishes control of our keyboard. That's what it does. Let's try it out. So I start typing one day. I start typing my name in there. Oh, here we go. And my number, whatever. Oh, what happened? Did I want that to happen? Tap. Oh, how do I get it back? It's gone. Right? That's not something that I want. That back, right? I resign first responder, but when I click back in there, I want to get it back, right? Because I've got a gesture, right? So let's try this again. So the expected result that I wanted was when I launch my app. So I click in there, right? Oh man, what happened to my keyboard? It's not working anymore. Well, I clicked away. That's why. On tap gesture recognized. As soon as I click away, it's gone. Anywhere else. Right? Even here. Right? Did I miss a step? Right? So let's go back and see what I did. I was really quick. Release the mouse when you use the we did that. We talked about what it is. It's an action, right, with a gesture recognizer. And then this method is called whenever the user taps in the main view. Add the code to close the keyboard, which we already did. And we already know how to do that. We did that. But the problem is, and this is the problem before we did the slider, but the problem is Yeah, it does that, Tom, but it also closes anything. If we click before anything, it doesn't give me back control again. How do I get back control from a gesture recognizer? I click something else. I've got this tap gesture, right? So it doesn't close anything, and it closes both of these things. That's a problem, right? And by the way, why can't I use the sender in this case? Why? Because I don't want to click anything. I want to only close certain things. I don't want to close the whole bloody application, right? That'll just relinquish control. I won't have any control at all. Because the sender is going to be the background, right? All right, let's comment these out for a second and see what the problem is. Okay, so I'm going to comment these two fields out, right? Here's I'm going to save this and run it again. Oh yeah, better stop this instance and rerun it again. So it works for the field. Now when I put one back, I'm going to put one back at a time and see what happens. And see if you can help me troubleshoot. So I go back here. Oh man, what happened? How come the field's not working? Is that me? Is that the field? Did I do something wrong? Type in there. Did I do something to disable it from a hardware perspective? Is that why it's not coming with the keyboard? How do I bring my keyboard up in the simulator? Is it working the way? Okay, before we go, so I know it's 10:20 and you all got to go, right? How do I show you my phone? Right? Remember I talked about the reflector 2 with my phone. Well, there's two ways. First of all, in this environment, you need to be wired, number one. Right? So if you're going to do your testing within the environment, you need to have a cable for it to work, or else it's not going to work, number one. Okay, the great thing about this, because I want to test it on my phone, good enough, right? I can't test my stuff out here to make sure that this all works, right? And in order for me to provision my phone, I've had to take some steps. Now I'm just going to disable my mouse so I can plug in my phone. And here's my phone. So I'm going to run this thing on my phone. Now you guys can see it here, but I want to show it to you guys, right? Fourth Transformation. Great, fantastic book about AR and MR in the coming months. And it looks like these authors here, they talked about how, see, I'm talking now because I'm able to plug in my phone and plug in author. These guys talk about AR and MR and how if you don't have augmented reality and mixed reality before virtual reality comes through, you're going to be behind the times. Okay, now let's let that do what it's supposed to do. But notice up here, I want to use my phone, right? So the good thing is, here's my phone, comes up, right? That's good. Now, one thing you're going to notice also is up here, it's going to start indexing, right? It's going to start indexing because it's going to try to use my phone as a target, okay? But you can't see my phone, right? And I want to turn on the ability for you to see my phone. But I need an app for that, right? And the app that I need is called Reflector 2. So I'm going to search for Reflector 2. Okay. And then I need to run my Reflector 2 app on my phone, right? Plus use. So I'm going to go to my phone, on tap this thing. Let's see if I can get this to go and record it. But a lot of times it doesn't work. I'm going to search for Reflector 2 on my phone. So here's Reflector, Director. Reflector. There it is. So there's two. There's Director and Student. I want to have Director. I want to put that on. Now, if it detects my phone, this is good, right? Because, skip. Okay, and what it's going to do is going to tell me my code. Here's my MacBook Pro. I'm going to connect to it. Let's see if I can connect. Now, this is the problem. With it needs, for whatever reason, it needs to be wired and have wireless access, which is really crazy, right? I'm trying. No device is connected. And the reason for that is because I'm not connected. Now, a lot of times what I can do as well is I can use AirPlay only when I'm using a like if I was trying to AirPlay this device, So if I said something like, "Hey, let's AirPlay this to my Mac," and I kind of would swipe up, and I want to kind of do AirPlay mirroring, right? But unfortunately, what happens is because Reflector 2 is not connecting, you can't see it. Because that means I only have to have, it's got to be connected to wireless. But even though we're connected to the same wireless, my phone and my Mac, because I'm getting two different IP subnets that I'm part of in wireless. That's one of the problems with wireless. Even though I'm connected directly, it won't matter, right? So one of the challenges. Oh, well. Let's try this app out. Let's see what happens. And I'll show you two here in the class. I apologize for those people who are, well, you won't see this. Let's see what happens when I run this thing on my app, on my phone, while my device is locked. My device is not locked. I like that. My device is locked now, too. Okay, let's try this again. You know what that needs, right? A reconnection. Let's also quit Reflector 2 just because I'm nervous that that's the issue. Let's try this out. Bear with me, guys, one more second, then I'll swear to this. Okay. So two things. One thing is I'm going to save my files. And let's see if something else is going on with iTunes that's locking my device. No, this is good. See my device here as well. I'm going to kill iTunes for a second just to get rid of it. I'm just using my touchpad here so I can do this thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock. I'm going to kind of detach my phone and reconnect my phone unlocked. So I'm going to show you how it works. I don't care about this. I do care about this, right? And now let's see if this will work if I press this. I've already done that. Isn't that funny? Let's see if it works anyway. Allow. Always allow. Signing the product, installing Tom's phone, performing install actions. And now you see it's kind of installing here on the right. You can't see it, unfortunately, for people at home. But it's actually yay! Okay, now what it should do is if I press this, it should bring up my keyboard. Yeah? Do it there because of what I did. Type it in. If I press away, it goes down, right? Press it back in there, it should go back up, which is that's my expected behavior. The other one should still stay up, right? And then when I press done, it should go down. Or press in there, it should come up. Sorry, I know it's hard to see. It should go down. That's the gesture recognizer working properly. Okay? Because I joined my emulators messed because I must have basically took the keyboard away. You can put the keyboard back on hardware. Questions? I know I covered a few things, right? But the main things I want you to take away from today, and I'm going to stop debugging for a second, right? And I'm sorry, I don't know why, for whatever reason, it's not working. Things I want you to take away from this is this. Yes, you can do automatic layout. And yes, for the most part, it works okay for a couple of views. Adaptive layout, because if you don't do that, bad things happen. You can definitely set up your own images and everything else, just like we did. I did with Fireworks. I recommend that when you use iOS to make your own images and at least 3 different sizes for different size classes. That's really, really important. What we talked about today was this gesture recognizer, right? Which is kind of, we did a kind of a brief on what this gesture recognizer does. To relinquish control of the keyboard and to use the built-in keyboard. That's another thing you can do. I would totally allow that for your, if you can make it work. Or calculator. Calculator, you can use built-in keyboard, right? Make it come up and stay up the whole time. And there's a way of doing that. You have buttons built in. And feel when it's already there. It may look funny. Any other questions for today, right? Finish off your calculators the next week by, remember, they're due Monday. That's the day before class, right? Tuesday, I'm going to go around and I'm going to check it out with you guys. I want to see what they look like, right? So don't be late because I want to try and mark you on Tuesday. Guys, thank you so much. See you next week. Now, what the hell happened?